Yo guys, what is up? Mox in our Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going over the January 15th update notes. In this update, they buffed drop rates, Harlowe, and Amon, and more. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's do this. So the first thing, it was a note from the devs. This minor update includes a new set of weekly activities in addition to a permanent increase to dedicated drop rates and buffs to Harlowe and Amon players. We love seeing how much you enjoyed our season's looting and triple threat events during the holidays. You can look forward to more limited time big encore events with multiple bosses in the future. So that is confirmed. We'll be getting multi-big encore events more often. I think that should just be a permanent thing rather than a limited time thing, but cool that we're getting it. From all the feedback we've seen, it's clear to us how much you all enjoyed the limited time drop rates we introduced for the duration of the season's looting event. Once the event ended, we had an internal discussion about dedicated drop rates, factoring in both what we heard from you, the community, and our vision for how these drops should evolve. Beginning this week, we are permanently increasing the dedicated drop rates on bosses. These changes are a careful way for us to balance the game so that the loot drops feel like a meaningful increase from the base game. You'll be able to get more loot faster without breaking the systems that make Borderlands 4 unique, like the Moxie's big Encore machine. Looking ahead, we are working on ways to make loot even better in Ultimate Vault Hunter modes to make sure harder levels always feel rewarding. That is a very good note to make. So bosses are getting dedicated or buffed dedicated drop rates. That means that you're not going to be getting crazy legendaries just dropping out in the world, which I actually think is a great decision. That's part of what diluted legendary drop feel in Borderlands 3 was the amount of world drops just kind of dropping everywhere. This means that specifically bosses will be dropping more loot. They didn't give us any exact values. But one thing to note about the Borderlands 4 legendary drop rate system is that loot is tiered and has variance in their drop rates. So, for example, prior to these buffs, if you were farming like Axe Maul, just to spitball some numbers, I don't know if these are exact values, but like the bod would have like a 3% drop rate, but the throwing axe would have like a 10% drop rate because the bod was a higher tier of loot, so it'd have a variable drop rate. Sounds like all of these drop rates are going to be going up, so like maybe the bod now has like, I don't know, a 8 to 10% drop rate rather than 3%, but the throwing axe will now have like a 15% drop rate. So there's still going to be tiered variance in drop rates of legendaries, but all of them should be moving up from bosses. This does not mean that the Moxie's big Encore will be dropping more legendaries. That seems to be kind of like setting legendary drop rates to at like 25%. So that'll be the same if you're farming big Encores, but just normal boss farming should be more rewarding and easier to get the legendaries you want. Next up, we get gameplay changes, a permanent increase to legendary drop rates, and also the Phosphine variant of Daedalus legendary assault rifles, like the Bloody Lumberjack, have been added to the Foundry Freaks loot pool. And then we get to Vault Hunters, and we are starting with Harlowe Blue Tree buffs. I'm going to go through each one of these. So Concurrence, the action skill duration has been increased to 5%. Right now, Concurrence gives you 3%, so you're going to be getting more action skill duration for every entangled enemy. The next is Control Group. Killing an entangled enemy now restores 6% of Harlow's action skill cooldown and action skill duration. So Control Group was 3% on kill, and the duration was 2%. Both of these are going to 6%, so you'll have more uptime of your action skills with Control Group. Freeze Frame, the bonus cryo damage is increased to 20%. Max stacks are now 5. This isn't actually a damage increase, although it'll technically net out a better feeling skill. Freeze Frame is that your gun deal bonus cryo damage for every enemy she has in stasis. This would max out at 10 stacks. It's very rare that you would have 10 enemies in stasis. So this is going to be the same amount of max damage, but it's going to be easier to reach that max damage, because now you only need to have 5 enemies entangled to get 100% bonus cryo damage versus 10 enemies or in stasis not entangled. Endothermic reactions aura damage bonus has been increased to 6%. Endothermic reactions bonus damage was 5%, so going from 5 to 6 is like a net 20% damage increase. It's an all right change. And Heat Sink, her action skill cooldown rate is increased to 10%. This is Heat Sink, so it was 9% action skill cooldown rate. This is going to 10%. So we finally got Blue Tree Harlowe buffs. I don't really think this moves the needle for Blue Tree at all, to be honest. I think Blue Tree just is fundamentally flawed, and her action skill is just kind of fundamentally flawed for Blue Tree. Like, it needs reworks and retools. For example, all of the action skill duration in the world doesn't really matter if every time that you kill an enemy, your action skill just ends. I don't know. In terms of like, freeze frame is great because you've now got easier access to bonus cryo damage, but you still need to suspend 5 enemies in the air to get this damage. By the time that you would have done that, blue tree and green tree would have killed all those enemies already. And so I still, like, I'm glad to see some blue tree Harlowe buffs, but I really think she needs, like, some retools to the way that the skill works. It feels like you need, like, 3 augments just to make it viable. And so, like, baking in some more of the utility and damage from her augments and capstones into the skill to give her a little bit more options and things to play around with, I think would be really cool. But those are the blue tree Harlowe buffs. Next, we get Amon buffs. Forge axe and forge hammer detonation damage increased by 72%. I think this is pretty cool. Detonations are a really interesting mechanic, but they've been, not super impactful. 72% damage increase is quite substantial. So far, the most substantial buff we've seen. Get the Let Out. Amon's reload speed is increased to 5%. So Get the Let Out was 4% before, so not very substantial buff there. Hour of the Hammer increased Forge Hammer impact damage by 59%. Another solid buff. Freezer Burn increased cryo and incendiary bonus damage to 9%. This was 7% before, so like a 2% buff per skill point. Then we've got Armor of Contempt. Amon now gains 5% overshield when doing action skill damage. That's going from 3% to 5%. And Blade Tempest now fires 5 swords per barrage and address a reported issue that would cause a change in cooldown duration. This is going from firing 3 swords to firing 5 swords. Overall, the Amon buffs look a little bit more interesting. However, I still think it's hard to justify speccing deep into green tree. Deep green tree has kind of always been his weakest area. We now have Raging Inferno, which is quite a strong skill and definitely a reason to go, at least to that. But these like capstone skills and the whole like forged drone playstyle, I still think is very lacking. Just to point out something, reverse explosion is like not worth using. It's on, I think we need to update this. I think it's on like a 50-second cooldown to get a singularity where you could just have like a grenade with like a 4-second cooldown to get literally the same singularity, but you'd have to spec all the way down just to get this. Like, this needs to be way more impactful to justify, speccing all the way down to the bottom to pick up something like this. So overall thoughts on the buffs, I'm glad to see they're buffing in areas where characters are weak. Amon is definitely weak in green tree. Harlowe is definitely weak in blue tree. However, I know this is a minor update, so these are just percentage values. They still seem to be very, like, small buffs, even though they are just percentage buffs. They said in major patches and major updates they can do more, like, major reworks and retools. So I wasn't expecting anything like that, but it's now been like 4 months since the game came out, and Harlowe's received 2 total buffs to blue tree, with like now less than 10 lines total of buffs to blue tree. And it's still not viable. It's crazy to me that like 4 months into the game, blue tree is like really, there's just really no reason to use it over anything else. It's okay if it's not good at bossing, if it was really good at mobbing and it made up for that, but the other trees are just better at mobbing too. And so I'd really love to see them, if they're going this route of like, doing buffs to the character balance very infrequently, that when they do those buffs, they need to be more heavy-handed in those buffs. I don't know why they're so afraid of making things strong. If Blue Tree Harlowe was really strong, that'd be fucking sick. We'd have a reason to play it. And they just went crazy with the buffs, and they shifted the meta. That would be so cool. It'd give us so many cool new things to mess around with, and new toys and ways to play the game, and would introduce, a new life. I don't think these like really move the needle too much, and so I'd really love to see them do better on stuff like this. And it's been pretty disappointing comparing the balance changes that we got for BL3 to BL4. So that's my final note on that. Next, we've got our weekly big encore. That's going to be the Foundry Freaks. The Foundry Freaks drop the Chimurky, the Chuck, and the Bloody Lumberjack. I I would, if you're gonna farm this, I would try to find a good chuck. The chuck has 2 dedicated drops, but if you haven't found a like homing replicator chuck, it's actually one of the best TDRs in the game. So if you're looking to make a TDR build, farming for a like homing replicator chuck would definitely be worth your time. The weekly wildcard mission is one fell swoop for the GMR, and then Maurice's Black Market vending machine has moved. Maurice's Black Market machine is found in the Stoneblood Forest in Terminus Range. You're going to want to come basically drive up this road, and then once you get to this big tower on the left, go right, and you'll wrap around the building here, and then you'll find Maurice Black Market vending machine. My vending machine has the Aegon's Dream and a Dark Beast. No Jacob's Dark Beast. Sad. But that is where you'll find Maurice's Black Market vending machine. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on the changes, and hopefully we'll get some more clarity on what the drop rates have been changed to. I'll catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.